Imagine you're on a routine flight, just settling in, when something unexpected happens. A black man politely asks for a cup of water, but the flight attendant, without hesitation, refuses. Passengers around him exchange uneasy glances, sensing something isn't right. The tension in the cabin starts to build as the man remains calm, but firm, insisting on receiving the same service as everyone else. Whispers ripple through the rows. Why was he denied such a simple request? Some travelers pull out their phones, capturing the unfolding scene, while others sit in stunned silence. Just when it seems like the situation might escalate, something completely unexpected happens. Within minutes, the flight takes a dramatic turn, leaving everyone in shock. Stay tuned to find out how a moment of injustice led to a swift and surprising resolution, right in front of everyone on board. The man sits quietly, his expression a mix of confusion and frustration, while the flight attendant moves down the aisle, avoiding eye contact. Other passengers shift uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether to speak up or stay silent. Some whisper among themselves, wondering if they heard correctly. Did she really refuse him water for no reason? A woman across the aisle leans over, offering a sympathetic smile, but the tension lingers in the air. The man sighs, looking down at his hands, clearly trying to keep his composure. Meanwhile, a few rows back, someone discreetly presses the call button, hoping another crew member would intervene. Moments pass and the murmurs grow louder. The flight crew at the front seems oblivious, chatting with each other as if nothing happened. But the energy in the cabin has shifted, and it's clear that something isn't right. Everyone is waiting to see what happens next. As the plane cruises through the air, the unease in the cabin grows stronger. A young man seated near the back, who had been scrolling through his phone, now watches the situation closely. He glances at the flight attendant, who is busy serving drinks to other passengers without hesitation. His brows furrow. Why was the man denied something as simple as water? Meanwhile, a couple sitting nearby exchanges concerned looks, whispering about whether they should step in or wait for the crew to address it. The man, still sitting calmly, clears his throat and presses the call button. A different flight attendant approaches, her expression polite but guarded. He quietly repeats his request for water, and for a moment, it seems like the situation might be resolved. But just as she turns to get it, the original flight attendant suddenly intervenes, her voice sharp and dismissive. "I already told you without," she says, her tone leaving no room for argument. Passengers now begin to murmur more openly, and a sense of disbelief spreads through the cabin. A woman in the next row pulls out her phone, discreetly recording the interaction, while a businessman seated nearby leans over and asks, "Is everything okay?" The man forces a smile, but the frustration in his eyes is clear. The tension tightens, and it's no longer just about water. It's about fairness, respect, and the unsettling feeling that something isn't right. The atmosphere inside the plane is shifting, and people are beginning to take sides in a silent standoff. The cabin feels heavier now, filled with a quiet tension that's impossible to ignore. More passengers are glancing over, their curiosity turning into concern. A mother sitting with her child nearby watches closely, shaking her head in disbelief. The man, still holding his composure, takes a deep breath and calmly asks, "Are you sure there's no water available?" His voice is steady, but there's an unmistakable edge of frustration. The flight attendant stiffens, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Sir, I've already explained," she says curtly, her tone laced with impatience. At that moment, another crew member appears, sensing the growing unease. She approaches cautiously, her eyes darting between the man and the attendant. "Is everything all right here?" she asks, trying to diffuse the tension. The man gives her a pointed look and repeats his simple request. The attendant's face flushes slightly, but she stands her ground, insisting once more that they're out of water. Passengers are no longer whispering. They're openly watching now, some exchanging uneasy glances, others discreetly recording on their phones. A man seated across the aisle shifts in his seat and speaks up. "I just got a bottle of water a minute ago," he says, holding it up. The cabin falls into an uncomfortable silence as more heads turn toward the attendant. Her jaw tightens, and for the first time, doubt flickers across her face. The air feels thick with anticipation, as if everyone is waiting for something to break. The man remains calm but firm, his patience wearing thin. The tension is almost unbearable, and it's clear that something is about to happen, something no one on this flight will forget. Before anyone can say another word, a voice crackles over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to remind everyone to remain seated and refrain from recording any interactions with the crew." The announcement catches everyone off guard, and a few passengers exchange uneasy glances. The woman recording on her phone hesitates but keeps it running, lowering it slightly to avoid drawing attention. The man requesting water lets out a slow breath, his eyes locked onto the flight attendant, who now looks visibly uncomfortable. Just then, an older gentleman in first class stands up and walks toward the commotion. He's dressed sharply, with an air of authority that makes the entire row take notice. "Excuse me," he says firmly, looking directly at the attendant. "I'd like to know why this passenger is being denied service." His voice is calm but commanding, and the attendant's confidence begins to waver. She shifts nervously, glancing at her colleagues, but no one steps in. The passengers watch closely as tension thickens. The flight crew at the front exchange whispers, clearly aware that the situation is spiraling. The man in first class narrows his eyes. "Because I happen to know that water is still being served up front." The attendant stammers for a response, her face turning red. More passengers murmur in agreement, and the atmosphere in the cabin shifts from curiosity to quiet determination. Suddenly, a senior crew member arrives, her expression tense but professional. "Sir," she says, addressing the man in first class, "we'll take care of this." But before she can continue, the man requesting water stands up slowly, his voice calm but firm. "I'd just like to be treated like everyone else." His words hang in the air, and for a moment, it feels like the entire plane is holding its breath, waiting for what comes next. The senior crew member takes a deep breath, scanning the uneasy faces around her. The murmurs have grown louder, and it's clear the tension isn't going away. She turns to the flight attendant and speaks in a low, firm voice. "Please get the passenger a bottle of water." The attendant hesitates, but under the weight of dozens of watching eyes, she finally nods and walks toward the galley. A collective sigh of relief seems to ripple through the cabin, but the man in first class isn't satisfied. He crosses his arms and looks directly at the senior crew member. "This isn't just about water," he says, his voice calm but unwavering. "It's about respect." The senior crew member nods slowly, realizing the gravity of the situation. The flight attendant returns moments later, placing a water bottle on the man's tray table without a word. Her face is tense, and she quickly turns to leave, but before she can walk away, the senior crew member stops her. "Please step into the galley with me," she says, her tone leaving no room for argument. The attendant's face pales, and she follows hesitantly. Passengers watch in anticipation as the cabin door closes behind them. A few moments later, a muffled but sharp exchange of voices can be heard from the galley. Then the door swings open, and the senior crew member steps out, clearing her throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announces, her voice steady, "we apologize for any inconvenience caused. This matter has been addressed." The flight attendant walks back down the aisle, head lowered, as the senior crew member speaks quietly into a radio. A minute later, an unexpected announcement fills the cabin. Due to a personnel issue, a crew adjustment is being made. Gasps ripple through the passengers as another flight attendant takes over the aisle, and the original one disappears into the back, no longer in sight. The man finally takes a sip of his water, offering a quiet thank you. The tension eases, but the experience lingers in everyone's mind. What started as a simple request turned into a powerful moment, one that left the entire flight reflecting on fairness, respect, and the power of standing up for what's right. As the plane continues its journey, A sense of quiet relief settles over the cabin. Passengers exchange small smiles and knowing glances, some still whispering about what just happened. The man, now sipping his water, leans back in his seat, grateful for those who spoke up. The woman who had been recording discreetly puts her phone away, feeling satisfied that justice was served in its own way. A flight attendant, different from before, approaches with a gentle smile. "Is there anything else I can get you, sir?" she asks sincerely. The man shakes his head, offering a polite "no, thank you." The tension from earlier slowly fades, replaced by a renewed sense of calm. As the plane prepares for landing, it's clear this flight was about more than just a journey. It became a lesson in fairness, respect, and the importance of speaking out. Sometimes, the smallest actions can lead to the biggest changes.